Hi there and welcome along to the latest edition of the England Golf Podcast. Ian McFarlane here, thanks for joining me, and I'll be here to guide you through a bumper edition where we celebrate English success in the US Open thanks to Matt Fitzpatrick's thrilling win at Brookline. Was there ever any doubt that the Sheffield blade would show his mettle? Well, Matt's performance coach Steve Robinson lifts the lid on what makes a champion golfer. Steve worked with Matt from the age of 14 and knows him better than anyone. We also speak to the fantastic Martine and Heather Gilks. That's the mum and daughter combination from Coventry, who helped England's golfers with a disability enjoy a fantastic debut in the recent European Team Championships and Nations Cup in Belgium. And speaking of European exploits, well, England Golf's Director of Championships, James Crampton, stars in the podcast this time around, and that's because he won the European Senior Amateur title in Estonia, and it was his first event as a senior. James, who played for England as a youth, tells us why life begins at 50. And we also hear from Michael Morrison on golf's boom. Now, it's not the one the game is currently enjoying, but the original explosion of golf as a pastime for the masses in the Victorian era. Michael's written a fascinating new book on the growth of the game in England in the late 1900s and early 20th century, and joins us to reveal a few surprises about the game as it grew into the sport we now know and love. There's also a news roundup in the podcast, but first, let's hear from Steve Robinson, who's also a key member of Team Fitzpatrick, as well as being the England women's coach. Now, Robbo's one of the best in the business, a fantastic coach with a great personality, and a man who knows the game inside out. Like all of us, he was watching nervously as the 27-year-old Yorkshireman pulled off a stunning win in Boston. Was it really just a decade ago when Fitzpatrick was making his way in the England golf performance pathway on his route to the top? For Robinson, the US Open crown was a rich reward for Matt, who certainly has worked hard for every penny he earns on the pro circuit. But it was an unusual night for Robinson, as he tried to watch beyond midnight at the hotel he was staying at ahead of the Women's Amateur Championship at Hunstanton. Well, let Steve explain what happened.
So obviously I'm down at the Women's Amateur and staying in a hotel. I finished my meal and came back to the hotel, watched the golf on TV. Obviously it went on quite late and they shut the bar down. They started cleaning up around me. It got quite late and I managed to, they kept the TV on. Staff were fantastic. They kept the TV on until Matt holed out on 17 and then they had to close down. So I came back to my room and started to try to follow it on one of the apps, and I didn't get the video pictures, so I just got an old-fashioned blow-by-blow Sky Sports news app that said Matt had hit into the bunker on 18, and I was saying, oh no, this is now going to be quite tricky. And obviously Zalatoris looked like he was holding everything that he looked at that time. But yeah, absolutely overjoyed, obviously, for Matt and for Billy when they got over the line.
I won't ask the question. I know Matt's now banked a cheque for £2.5 million. I won't ask what your percentage is. That's between you and your bank manager in the Cayman Islands, I suspect. But in terms of Sunday night when he won, great excitement. It sounds as if you watched it the old-fashioned way. It's almost like watching the football on teletext, waiting for the page to refresh and find out what the final score was.
Absolutely.
But just what were your, knowing Matt and having worked so closely with him, you're obviously thrilled for him and Billy, as you said, but your emotions must be sky high as well, because you must be so thrilled to be part of such an exciting team and going forward, just what Matt can achieve in the game. So what was it like for you in that lonely hotel room on Sunday night as you heard that Matt had got over the line?
I had a good cry.
There were tears.
Yeah, there were tears. I had lots of people messaging. Obviously, I think from a personal point of view, I've been hugely fortunate working with England Golf. England Golf have been part of my development as a coach. In a few years, Nigel and Rebecca put me up to go on to the UK Sport Aspire program, and I would say I would have been around 50 then, and I was a bit scared of doing it and applying for it because I didn't think I would get on because it was all these great people from all these other sports. But fortunately, I got on it, and I spent 2 years on there, and I learned so much. And since then, obviously, the women's team have won 3 out of the last 5 European team championships that we've competed in. And I'm hugely proud of the teams that have played that and that achievement. And then this is a completely different level again, that you're testing yourself and your skills as a coach. And it was almost like, well, yeah, I can work at this level, and I've proved it doing my little job.
Sorry, Steve, can I just take you back to the first time you met Matt? I don't know if the first meeting was memorable in any way, or if there's just something you remember about a 14-year-old Matt Fitzpatrick that stuck with you to the present day. What kind of kid was he? Was it inevitable that he got to this point in his career? Or
no, as a player, I'd seen more talented players, but he had a different kind of talent. He was always going to be the best he could possibly be, and he was very much a scholar of the game, and he had this little bullety driver that he could hit quite low and into play, where other people were having to hit irons and rescue woods off the tee. He could just peg his driver up and just fire it down the narrowest of fairways, which I was always impressed with. And he just had this great golf IQ. He made the right decisions, which was quite uncanny for a young player. And obviously that's carried through into what he does now. I've not spoken to him, but we exchanged. I sent him a message of congratulations, and to which he replied, and he wrote some nice words about, you know, the work that we'd done. And then right at the very end of it, he said, "And by the way, my wedges need work."
That probably sums him up, because I read a great quote from Billy Foster. I think he was speaking to Ian Carter, the BBC's golf correspondent, and Billy said to Ian that, you know, the first time he kind of worked with Matt, he thought, this is the love child of Bernard Langer. He'd never seen somebody so meticulous in how he went about preparing for a round of golf and preparing for a tournament. And maybe that's something that he had within himself, and he always had that. But I'm sure it's something that came out with working with yourself, with Graham Walker. I think Matt himself mentioned John Jacobs as well as part of the England setup.
Yeah.
Guys who, if you don't mind me saying, are also meticulous in how you go about your business. It's not haphazard or off the cuff in any way. There is a structure to it. And that's something that's probably struck a chord with Matt, and it's something that he uses to this day. I'm also fascinated by what Matt does. He has a record of every single shot that he plays in practice rounds as well as in tournament play, and he analyzes the data from that. Now, data is a big thing in the modern world, but flipping heck, Steve, that's taking it to extremes, is it not?
No. No, it's not.
But not everybody does it, though.
Not everybody does it, but that's their choice, I suppose. So he had his data from his rounds and his practice rounds, but now we have data from practice. So at this moment in time, within our database, we have 8,500 shots recorded.
Wow, that's a lot.
When we first started doing it, I used to manually input that data. I used to sit in bed at 10 o'clock at night, inputting the data from the day's practice and what strength the wind was, what type of grass he was playing off, what club he used, how far it carried, how far it missed left or right, how far it, we were putting that into our individually inputting that data in every day until we built up this record of what he was doing, how far he was missing left with his 8-iron, how far it was missing right, what the range of carry was, and we basically have continued doing that, so we can now tell you what his lateral miss would be with driver with a 10 miles an hour left to right wind. We can tell you what it is.
He was used to being at the top of leaderboards as an amateur. I mean, he obviously won the US Amateur at the Country Club in 2013. He was a silver medalist at the Open at Muirfield the same year.
Yeah.
He played home internationals for England. He had a distinguished amateur career, world #1, I think, at one point as well. When you think back to that skinny youth that you first clapped eyes on at 14, I know he's still relatively slender. He's not skinny. He's filled out a little bit more. But are you proud to have played a part in his development? Are you proud that England Golf, as an organisation, and him being on our performance pathway, has played a part in him getting to top 10 in the world and being a major champion?
Absolutely. I mean, he's followed the pathway. Obviously, as a young lad, he worked with Graham and myself in the Yorkshire setup. He progressed from the Yorkshire setup into the England setup. England gave him playing opportunities and experiences around the world that he learnt from. And from a personal point of view, England Golf, Yorkshire Golf, the pathway from county to national has had a huge impact on not only Matt but his brother Alex. And yeah, I'm proud of that fact, because undoubtedly not just Matt but many other players wouldn't have that. If we give them opportunities that they might not be able to give themselves.
The great thing is, Steve, not only boys in Yorkshire, but boys and girls all over the country can look at a Matt Fitzpatrick and say, well, there's a young kid from Sheffield, from an ordinary family, from an ordinary background, who just worked and got to the very top. And it's the old thing, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And Matt is a very visible personality now for people to look to. Do you think his inspiration can help others who are maybe on the verge of getting into regional squads or national squads, and they just need that little nudge to get them to work harder and just focus a little bit more, and they could be the next, as you say, the next Matt Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, and definitely, and really, to some of the practice that Matt does, it's not rocket science. It's just great behaviours and building good habits and doing the things that you don't particularly need to be hugely talented at. Just becoming really good at, as Nigel always says, become great at the basics, become world class at the basic things.
Iconic moments in sports are always great to have, and I think that bunker shot that Matt played on 18 will go down as one of them. I don't know if you had the chance to see it yet, Steve.
Somebody showed me a video of it today. Yeah, amazing. And
for those of us of a certain vintage, it's Sandy Lyle out the bunker at Augusta on 18, isn't it? I mean, it's that good a golf shot under the extreme extremist of pressures.
I would not be lying if I had to say that I was over in the States about 5 weeks ago and we did a fairway bunker session. It was horrendous. And obviously we went back the following day and did that session again and worked it out. And there you go. There's a couple of things: the bunker session and creating the intent to chip in, which he chipped in this week as well. So these things look as if they come easy, but they're practiced.
Yeah, there's no such thing as an accidental major winner, is there? It's down to hard graft, and it's down to guys like yourself being on Matt's team and helping him get over the line.
Yeah, but I've seen the shot, and the shot wasn't just like that. It looked to be like the shape of the shot and how he maneuvered the ball.
Yeah, well, we're all glad he did play it and play it the way he did. He needed 2 putts and he took them, and that's the way to do it. And it's great to have another English major winner, and it's great that chap came through the England golf ranks and was helped by the likes of yourself, Steve. So congratulations to Matt, congratulations to you and the rest of Matt's team for the part you played in that victory, Steve. And let's hope there's more success in the future for Matt and any other aspiring English golfer coming through the ranks just now.
Yeah, thank you.
So there you have it, tears shed by Robbo, a revelation that Matt's not very good out of bunkers, who'd have thought it, and a message from Matt himself that he needs to work on his game. That's the mark of a true champion. Well done, Matt, well done, Steve, and roll on the 150th Open at St Andrews for the next bout of men's major drama. Also, good luck to Robbo and the women's team when they head to Wales early next month to defend their European Ladies Team Championship. Now, one duo who have already brought home a medal from the Euros are Martine and Heather Gilks. The golf-mad duo made history when they teamed up with the first English team to take part in the recent Euros on the links in Flanders, Belgium. The Nations Cup team they were part of took silver, a brilliant effort in their first outing at this level, and the first time that England Golf has both fielded and selected a team of disability golfers. And as I found out, the week meant the world to the Gilks family, who are an inspiration to all of us for the way they refuse to let physical disability get in the way of their golf.
Martine, Heather, thank you very much for joining us in the latest edition of the podcast. Quite an exciting week for the Gilks family last week in Belgium. Martine, tell us a little bit about it. You were there representing England in the Nations Cup and European Team Championships.
Yes, I have to say, ever since I got the phone call from England Golf, I have felt like Alice in Wonderland. And I wake up every morning going, I just imagined that phone call. It didn't really happen. It was just a tremendous experience being part of a team, because so often with golf you're playing individually, so to be part of a team and to represent your country is just such a huge honour. It was just amazing.
And doubly special, I suppose, Heather, the fact that you were in the team as well and got to play with Mum.
Yeah, it was amazing because we knew straight away that I'd been picked, and then later on we got a call saying you've been picked too. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love golf so much, because in other sports you don't get that range of ages. But I think when we were there was someone who was 75 playing in it, and the youngest was like 13. That's just awesome, I think.
I mean, golf is unique like that, isn't it, Martin? You can't get that in any other sport where people can play equally and compete against each other, and that's the beauty of the sport, isn't it?
Yeah, and also within disability golf, most of the tournaments we've played in, the Edgar tournaments on the European Tour, men, ladies, juniors, and professionals and amateurs all play in the same tournament, which is really unusual. And so you get to play with a wide range of people. It's fantastic.
So tell us what it was like, Heather, last week when you're out there, you're representing England. I've seen the photographs with the blazer and the cravats, all looking very smart. What was it like to represent your country?
I think when everyone talks about it, they always think it's absolutely amazing. And then you sort of go there and you're going down the 18th and you can see all your teammates waiting on the 18th green to cheer you on. And I don't think there's a feeling that matches with that. I think it was over the second round I had a really nice score going on to the 18th, and everyone knew. And I came up to the 18th green, and there was someone who I'd only known for a few days. He came up to me and gave me this massive hug and was cheering me on, and I went to go do my putt. And it's friendships like that you get from team sports which will just last forever.
Should put it in context, there was 8 golfers representing England last week. That was the first time England golf had fielded a team at this event, which is a huge thing for us as an organisation, but also for you guys as competitors. So, Martine, what did it mean to you to be part of that first wave of players at that event?
Yeah, I mean, to explain the background, it was just over a year ago, both of us found out about disability golf. We didn't know about it. So for us, the whole thing's been so new. We've both got world rankings, and because of our world rankings, that meant we were selected for the team. So it was the first time we'd been to this event. We'd heard it's every 2 years, so we heard there'd been events previously. But that still didn't prepare us for going there and what it was going to be like. The closing ceremony, you all queue up with your flags, and each nation comes in with their flag. And it is that tremendous feeling, I think, and having kept it together and being very focused on the course for 3 days, just that feeling of elation, being able to come through with your flag. And along with all the other disability things we've done, it's not just your playing partners, your team, it's actually other countries support you as well. We played our second round with 2 guys from the Czech Republic who were much higher handicaps than us, and on the first hole my playing partner it was a par 5, so we didn't have a shot on it. But as soon as we got our par putt in, both the Czechs came across with fist pumps and saying, "Yay, par!" And it's that sort of, you are competitive, but there is a sort of support there, which is just amazing.
What was it like for you, Heather? The whole experience. The minibus over there, the kind of sense of camaraderie, that maybe people that you'd never met before, and now possibly friends for life through golf.
Yeah, I think definitely the friendships I've made were one of the best things about this trip. So although obviously there were 2 separate teams, there was the gross team and the net team, I never thought of it as 2 teams. We were just one group of people. Definitely, especially with the team. Sorry, I'm mixing up my words now. So, sorry, can you just repeat the question so I can get back into it?
I can't even remember the question, Heather.
That's cool.
But it was a fantastic experience. You're saying that it was like one team. There was 2 separate strands,
team.
the gross and the net, but you all came together as one to represent the country.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah, and on the course, particularly that final round, because we were playing singles, because you didn't have the support of having your partner with you, so you felt very much alone on the course. And you'd see teammates over 2 fairways because it was a links course, you could see across. And we'd joke the night before about the Ian Poulter beating the chess postman. And so they'd look across and they'd do that at you, and then that would make you smile, and it would just give you that little lift you needed on the way around. So that was really cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Especially because obviously we were all out, so I had one of my teammates in front and one behind. So every time we got a putt-in or something, you could see a little fist pump, and then that would give you the little boost you need for your next shot. Definitely looking at all the other teams, they obviously had really strong friendships, but I don't think any matched with our team. We were all so close. Most of them I knew before going into it, but there was a few that I didn't know or didn't really speak to very much, and now they're some of my closest friends.
The thing about it is, it's not just taking part, it's much more than that, it's competing. And you guys competed at the very top level. Both teams got podium finishes, got medals. Did that just add to the sense of occasion? The fact that you weren't just there and you finished 12th, you were there and teams finished 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, we were taking it very seriously, and we were. It was that good because England Golf supported the team so well. We had 2 team managers and a welfare officer out with us, and they looked after us so well. So all we had to do was focus on the golf, and that enabled us to be able to do it. Because sometimes, if you have a disability, you've got other things that you need to look after. So, I had my wheelchair out there, so our teammates at some point, but mostly the team managers pushing me around from bit to bit to help and just taking the pressure off so that we could just keep ourselves as in focus on the golf as we needed to be. And one of my pet hates when I watch sport, particularly sort of football and rugby, is when it's England playing and people go, we're 2 up. And I was like, hang on a minute, you're not playing. But I went to the hotel room on the night before the final round. I said, guess what? We can say we're in second place because we are playing for England. And it was great. It was great fun.
Special moment.
Yeah.
I was curious as to what you said earlier, Martine, about the fact that, disability golf was not something that you had really considered a year, 2 years ago.
Didn't know about it. So.
You've obviously got a physical impairment that hinders you, or on the face of it would hinder you in the golf course, but you might argue that it doesn't. It's opened a lot of doors for you. So can you just tell us a little bit about your background in the game and how you came to get into playing these disability golf events?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I started golf in 2010, I think it was. I started playing at a local club just through a beginner's course that they were running, and they had an academy scheme, and I came through that. From that, I helped out with county, and I did county comps and championships with them for 3 years. Really enjoyed that. And I moved to this club, Coventry Golf Club, about 7 years ago, and been playing here and really enjoying it. And on social media, like I said, probably last March, April time, there was a post from a lady saying, I'm looking for female disabled golfers, if you know of any. So I sent her a message, said, well, you got two for the price of one. And she introduced us, and Edgar last year very kindly, the Rose Series, to promote disabled golf, invited 4 female disabled golfers to take part in exhibition matches. And Heather was very lucky to get invited. She went to Woburn and the Buckinghamshire last year, so that sort of got us into it. And our first competition was in the English Open last year at Whittlebury, which England Golf ran for the first time. And that was our first Edgar competition, and yeah, fell in love with it.
Yeah,
and the ladies who caddied for us again fell in love with it. Yeah, because of the atmosphere.
Sure. Now, am I right in saying that you suffer from osteoarthritis, which affects your mobility?
Yeah.
But as I said, clearly it's not a hindrance to you enjoying the game of golf. Can you just tell us how you deal with that and how you cope on the golf course? Yeah, sure.
So I've actually got 2 conditions. I've got osteoarthritis, which affects most of the joints in my body, and a few years ago I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is like a chronic pain condition. So that affects my hands quite badly. So I use special golf gloves. I've got my grips have been re-gripped with slightly larger grips. It takes the pressure off my hands. I have to use various braces on different knees and elbows and wrists, and obviously I have to use a buggy to access the course. But the thing with all those conditions is actually getting out and about is good for you. It's good for your mental health.
Sure.
Because if my condition's bad, really, I'd just stay at home and I wouldn't go out and do anything. Whereas golf actually forces me to go out. And as soon as you get out on the golf course, you've got the friendship within the golf club here, and you go out with your mates and have a good time. You hit the odd good shot, and that's like, oh yeah, and it helps. A little bit of exercise with arthritis is good for it. And like I say, it's more the mental health and actually getting out and about and doing things and not sort of feeling sorry for yourself stuck at home.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Is it the same for you, Heather? I mean, you've had cerebral palsy since an early age, and obviously that affects. Is it your left side that you're affected mainly on?
It affects both sides.
Okay.
But my left side is more severely affected than the right.
Do you find it a big help to you though? In terms playing golf helps your overall fitness and mental health as well as physical health.
Oh, definitely. Well, the reason I took up golf was my physiotherapist wanted me to play a sport. A lot of people with cerebral palsy, when they get to my age, they sort of give up on their physio and don't do much sport because we are such a disadvantage at it. So because I already had a relative playing golf, I decided to take up golf as physio and then ended up falling in love with it fairly quickly. And I can't imagine now my life without golf in it. It's definitely golf driven. Going out on the course, so obviously I have to use a buggy to access the course, but some days are more difficult than others. But even when I'm having a tough round, like I'll hit that odd shot, which like reminds me of why I love golf so much. And it's also one of the first sports where with the handicapping system, I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage. If every time I tried running or something like that, I'd always need a head start or something, but in golf I don't need a head start. I can compete against anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to hear, isn't it, that golf is a great leveller, isn't it? Because of the handicapping system, anybody can play against anyone. As you said earlier, a 15-year-old was competing last week against a 75-year-old at the European Team Championships, which is the real beauty of it. In terms of, you're a teenager, Heather, so for some teenagers, golf isn't cool.
Yeah.
Don't know why they think that, because clearly it's the coolest thing in the world when you get to play it. Have you tried to convert friends to the game? Are you succeeding in that fact? Because they must see you on the golf course having fun and playing for England and think, hang on a minute.
Yeah, so actually I found when I first started golf, there was no one at my high school who really did it. But in the last sort of few months, I think when they get to sort of my age, like 16, I know a whole group of guys who go down to the driving range and go play, and I've tried to get my boyfriend into golf. He came up for 9 holes the other day, and I think it's something that definitely needs growing among the younger age groups. I find a lot of the time the reason younger people play golf is that they have a relative who plays it rather than they just happen to discover it. But it's something I'm really keen to promote.
Obviously, you played last week in the Disability European Championships. Do you see yourself as disabled golfers? Is that a label that you don't like? Do you just see yourselves both as golfers now? I mean, how do you view the situation?
Yeah, it was interesting. Just before I went, I played in a ladies' open with 3 friends, and they were chatting to me about it, obviously very excited to hear what was going to happen. But they all said, we don't really think of you as disabled. I think the thing is with golf, when we turn up here, people don't see you for your disability, they don't see you for your age. I mean, I quite often play golf with ladies who are in their 80s, and then we'll sat having a cup of tea or whatever afterwards, and they're saying, oh yeah, we forget you're the same age as our children. We just think of you as the same age because you're playing golf together. And I think that's what golf is. You tend to ignore everything around it. And certainly the disability golf events, you don't really notice because everybody has something there. Everybody's coping with something in their lives, and we all just get on with it. And that's the thing that I notice when I go to the disability events, is that at the club here you might get people moaning about a bad back or their knees are playing up, but at the disability events you very rarely hear anybody saying anything negative because everybody's in the same boat. You just get on with it. It's a very positive place to be.
I always find there's great humour as well, because when you're not a disabled golfer, you're maybe a little bit shy and you choose your words very carefully because you don't wish to offend anybody, and quite rightly so. But the golfers that are involved in disability sport, some of the humour is quite dark, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about it, because quite often people see disability as a very sore topic and they don't like to talk about it, and it can be a bit awkward. But then you go to these events and everyone's making sort of dark humour jokes about it, and it's definitely a completely different atmosphere to everything else.
But listen, guys, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on all you achieved in the European Team Championships in Belgium. You'll be looking to do it again in the future? Team Gilks ready to go again if you get the shout?
I would love to.
Yes. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, well done on behalf of everyone for competing and doing so well last week, and good luck with your golfing futures.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great stuff there from Martine and Heather, and I'm sure it won't be long before Heather gets down to single figures and Mum needs to build a bigger trophy cabinet. Now remember, if you have a disability or impairment or know someone who does and who could benefit from getting into golf, there's plenty of information on disability golf on the England Golf website. Just type disability into the search engine and all the info is at hand. Now, staying on a European theme, it's that man Crampton. He only blew out the candles on his birthday cake in April, and trust me, Lincolnshire Fire Brigade were on standby due to the amount of flames. But 2 months later, he's teed it up in Estonia and won the European Seniors Amateur Crown by 3 shots, and he was the only man in the field to go under par. By day, he's the man who does a remarkable job running over 50 championships for elite and amateur golfers around England, but he also plays off a handicap index of plus 2.8 and is now the top senior in Europe. Here's James's story. James, thanks for joining us, the new European Senior Men's Amateur Champion. What an accolade. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, no, it was very good. It's my first one, having turned 50 only sort of 6 or 7 weeks ago. So sort of limited opportunity of playing in the over 50s category. So European Amateur Seniors was quite an attractive sort of proposition. Certainly at Parnu Bay in Estonia as well, it looked before I went to be a nice venue. So I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a crack and see how I got on. And delighted with how I played and how I managed the week and managed to win by 3 shots. So it was great.
Now, we've had an email in since your victory, and I'll just read it back to you. It says, surely some mistake. How can James be eligible for senior golf? He looks far too young. That was from a Mrs. Crampton from Spalding. So, but you've just turned 50, James. So you're just eligible for these events. I bet the other seniors were delighted when you pitched up and won by 3 shots.
I think I was possibly the youngest there. Like I say, having turned 50 only sort of 6 or 7 weeks prior, even less than that actually, but just before just end of April. So there's there was a few sort of younger ones, but potentially I was probably the youngest one there. So like I say, nice to play in an event where I'm playing against people of relatively similar age to me, which has not been the case for quite a few years now. If I have tried to be competitive, I've tried to sort of I've encountered sort of the younger golfers who hit it further than I do and everything else. So it was a nice change for me to be the one that was sort of hitting last into greens rather than first, has been the case for a few years now.
Now, talk us through the championship in hole. Started with a 71, which put you in second spot, I think. 69 on day 2, which gave you a handy lead getting into the final round. So did you sleep easily ahead of Saturday's final?
Remarkably so. I played okay for the first 2 rounds. Didn't do anything spectacular. Hit it pretty straight as I often do. Hit a lot of greens, which round the Parnu Bay links was very beneficial because the greens were probably as slopey as I've ever seen a golf course. So hit it nicely. Didn't hole any putts, which again is nothing unusual for me. So didn't do anything spectacular, didn't do anything silly. So yeah, ended up with a 3-shot lead after 2 rounds, and slept okay. Felt pretty good. I think in the past I've always sort of had a tendency to maybe overthink things and let the mental side of the game maybe get a bit of the better of me. So I was really focused on trying to, that whole sort of cliche of one shot at a time and everything else. And waking up for that final day, I felt remarkably calm, which was pleasing. And then on that first tee again, felt really calm, hit a really good tee shot down the first, and off we went. So really the big thing for me is just how I manage myself mentally. I thought that was one of the real positive aspects, not only of winning the championship, of course it is, but actually just how I managed the sort of situation that I found myself in on that last day.
At one stage on that Saturday, you had a 7-shot lead, I think, but then something happened at the 14th that maybe whittled it back a little bit. At that point, were you panicking a little bit?
Again, as I've just said there, I was remarkably calm. It's always one of those things that you see it with our championship events where somebody's got a healthy lead, they do something a bit silly, and all of a sudden panic stations set in, and it's that whole thing about you don't want to be the one that blows that massive lead. I just hit a slightly poor shot. There was a tree short right of this par 3 green. My playing partner hit the same tree, ricocheted front edge of the green. Mine hit the same tree and ricocheted in the water. So I made 6 there. But again, standing on that next tee, unbelievably calm. I thought literally I'd be a bit rabbit in headlights, but hit a couple of really nice shots down the next hole, hold the putt for a birdie, and that settled me down again. But yeah, I could have done without that. It's not good for the nerves to put yourself in that position. And I didn't realise I was that far ahead. Again, as I said earlier, I was really just trying to sort of hit one shot at a time, not look at scoreboards and all that sort of stuff. I knew the 2 people I played with were possibly my nearest sort of competitors. So I had a bit of an idea where I was in relation to those 2, but actually didn't appreciate that I was as far ahead as I was. So doing what I did on 14, Matthias, who we played with from Sweden, he made 2 on that hole. So took the lead, sort of deducted that lead by 4 shots straight away. And then he birdied the next hole, and I managed to follow him in from about 10 foot. So just calm things down again a little bit. And the last few holes at Parnu Bay are particularly difficult. So it was nice to hit a few good shots and not put myself under huge amounts of pressure with those last few holes to play.
Now, we don't want to lose you as director of championships here at England Golf, because you do a fine job putting on all the events, over 50 events for handicap and elite golfers throughout the season. But are you thinking there might be a future in this golf game for you? That could be a career move?
I'm not sure about that. I think it's nice to see that I am actually competitive at this age group. So it's made me look at what playing opportunities I might have going forward, and do I concentrate on this now rather than bashed my head against a bit of a brick wall against the younger guys. So my next one's Senior British Open qualifying. So again, that's one of the limited opportunities I've got as a 50-year-old. So I'm going up to Ladybank to try and qualify for the Senior British Open. I never quite made the Open proper when I was younger, so that would be a nice one to tick off the list. And if I can do that, then obviously winning the European Seniors and making Senior British Open qualifying would probably be considered quite a good year. And then I can consider what other events I might want to play in going forward. But one of the certainly aims is to represent England at senior level, because I did it at youth level, I did it at full England international level. And I don't think there's many people that probably have done youth, full international, and then senior international levels. So that's a little bit of a personal goal. So I'll probably be working in championships a little bit longer at this time.
I was going to say, because you did have a very distinguished junior and then into the England squads when you were late teens, early 20s. What went wrong in the 30 years in between times? Was it?
Thinking about it too much, probably. I was sort of looking back on it. I was probably I didn't get enough out of results as I probably should have done, and I think a lot of that is the whole mental part of the game, which I wasn't very good at looking back, and that's what I said earlier about how sort of proud I am of myself to have managed and coped with it mentally like I did, because these guys are competitive. They play the circuit and their tournament sort of ready, if you like, and so it was nice to manage myself in the way that I did. But I think probably looking back on my sort of career as I do now, I let myself a little bit down through my sort of lack of mental skills, if you want to put it that way. So it's nice to hopefully see that those things are probably getting better as I get a little bit older, which is good for any future events I want to play in.
Well, listen, congratulations on the win on Estonia. I know we've had a bit of fun poking fun at you, but it was incredibly well done in your debut. So well done, and I look forward to getting a putting lesson from the European Seniors champion in the near future.
I'll talk to you all about the sort of mental aspect of putting. And we can go from there.
Good stuff, James. Congratulations again. Thanks for chatting. And now let's take a visit to the England Golf newsroom to find out the latest from in and around England Golf. The winners of the English senior men's and women's stroke play titles were recently decided, with Switzerland's Sophie Ducret and England's Trevor Foster taking the silverware. Sophie, from Lausanne, sought off the threat of 76 other golfers at Coventry Golf Club to win her first international title, while Trevor came out on top at Ashridge and Berkhamsted to add the English title to the Irish and British wins he already had under his belt. The golfer from Pleasington in Lancashire admitted the victory was emotional after years of battling injury and mental health challenges.
I'll tell you now, if Debbie were with me and walking around me, she's been an absolute rock for me. And you know, that's why I'm where I am. I'm not embarrassed to say, and I hope it helps people. I've suffered with depression for 30 years and anxiety, and I've had a rock of a wife that's got me through that. And to come back and win majors like this, I had a false hip, left hip 6 years ago, and for people out there that, you know, I thought my golf were ended once I had this false hip, but no. But what I've done, I've come back. I've won the British, I've won this, I've won the Irish, and you know, Order of Merit, and you know, if it helps anybody, you know, you can come out of it.
As mentioned earlier, England's disability golfers brought home medals from the recent Euros in Belgium. Our scratch team took bronze in the team championship, while our handicap golfers returned home with silver. Well done to all 8 members of the squads who enjoyed a fantastic debut at this level. Congratulations also to the 5 English women who represented GB&I at Merion in the 42nd Curtis Cup. A strong American side retained the trophy, but Amelia Williamson, Emily Price, Charlotte Heath, Annabelle Fuller and Kaylee McGinty all enhanced their reputations with the way they played over 3 days. England Golf has launched its first sustainability plan in the drive to help golf go green. Every sector of society, including the golf industry, is feeling the harmful effects of climate change, resource scarcity and tighter regulations. The plan aims to educate and inspire the golf community and encourage more sustainable methods. Details can be found on the England Golf website. Charlie Thornton, a former member of the England men's squad, has succeeded another Englishman, Callum Barrow, as the Scottish Men's Open champion. The Yorkshireman saw off John Goff down the stretch at Cruden Bay to win the title and has now announced he's turning pro. Good luck, Charlie. And finally, Sam Bairstow enjoyed a stunning run to the final of the Amateur Championship at Royal Lytham, but fell just short of claiming the ultimate prize. The England men's squad player was in good form heading into the final against South Africa's Alderich Potgieter, but the 17-year-old enjoyed a sparkling run in the morning session to take a commanding lead into lunch, and Bairstow's afternoon fight back could not halt the South Africans' break for the winning line and a 3-2 win. That's the latest news from the England Golf Newsroom. Keep up to date by checking our social channels and the England Golf website. Okay, to round off this edition of the podcast, let's take a trip back in time. As I mentioned earlier, golf is booming and we're all grateful for that, but 160 years ago there was hardly a soul playing the game in England. Now that's in stark comparison to the growth of the sport in the middle part of the 19th century in Scotland. Now not many histories are written about what or who comes second, but it is important to chart the rise and reasons for the growth of golf in England. Until now, no one has done it on a nationwide basis. There's been lots of club histories, club centenary books, but step forward Michael Morrison with his new book that explains how golf took a grip on late Victorian English society. Michael, thanks very much for joining me here on the podcast. It's fair to say English golf is enjoying a little bit of a boom period at the moment, but the original boom period in golf was back in the 19th century, and you've just written a book about it, The Great English Golf Boom, from 1864 to 1914. If you can, Michael, can you just paint a picture for us about the state of golf in England round about 1860, just the starting point for this new book?
Yes, I mean, golf pretty much was limited to just 2 golf clubs at that time. It was very much a small minority sport. There was a club in London, Blackheath, which was formed in the 18th century. And there was a very small club in Manchester, Old Manchester as it's known these days, which only had about a dozen players. In total, there was probably no more than 100 golfers in England at that time. And most of them were expatriate Scots who had moved south for a variety of reasons, typically employment or a position in government of some sort. But there was very little interest at all amongst the English population at that time. And this is despite the fact the railways had become well established and golf in Scotland had boomed in the mid 19th century on the back of the expansion of the railways there. But there didn't seem to be any similar impetus in England at that time.
It's strange to think, isn't it, Michael? Because you just assume that when golf exploded in Scotland that it would naturally spread over the border and a larger population base, etc. Industrial revolution happening at exactly the same time that things would mirror each other both sides of the border, but clearly that wasn't the case. And do you know why that was the case?
Well, I think at the nub of it, it took a long time for the awareness of golf to increase amongst the English population. To some extent, the railways were a factor here, in that more English people started travelling to Scotland. Once the railway systems of Scotland and England became interconnected in the late 1840s, then there was more transfer of English holidaymakers going to Scotland and seeing golf perhaps for the first time. I mean, the 2 clubs that I mentioned that existed in England, in Blackheath and Manchester, they were not particularly public, not easy for the general public to observe and see how golf was being played. So inevitably things took time. And partly that was the increasing awareness of English people of the game as a consequence of travelling to Scotland, and also of Scots moving south, of emigrating from Scotland into England for work and other reasons. And hence that provided with a small group of people who maybe got involved in founding the initial clubs in the 1870s and so forth.
It strikes me that whenever you think about golf back in the day, centuries ago, you're thinking traditionally about links golf as perhaps being the starting point for many golf courses around the world. But from what you're saying about England, the initial ones weren't located in these coastal areas. It was, city locations, if you like, urban locations. How quickly did that change? How quickly did the game start spreading when the bug eventually bit?
Well, I guess some of the statistics that you might be interested in knowing is, so 1864 was probably the start point of the first formation of an English golf club, and that was in North Devon, Westward Ho, Royal North Devon as it became in 1867, and that was the first club that probably could be categorized as an English golf club. Most of the members there were English. There was a very, very slow takeoff through the 1860s, 1870s, but gradually things started to pick up in the 1880s. And by 1889, so this is 25 years after the formation of Royal North Devon, there were 100 golf clubs in England. So we were starting to see the takeoff and interest of golf by that time. But that was only really the start. And it was only from 1890 to 1914, which is essentially the title of my book, which is The Great English Golf Boom. And that's when golf really took off. So in a quarter of a century, you had 100 clubs formed. In the next quarter of a century, 1,200 clubs were formed in England. That was nearly one every week for that entire period. So that was the dramatic boom that then happened.
It is a remarkable statistic, that, isn't it? Because it's quite phenomenal how the game just exploded. And I guess it follows at the same time as that great Victorian era of sport becoming popular for the masses. So was golf becoming a mass participation sport? Who was playing the game when these clubs started to appear all across the country from really 1890 onwards?
Well, in the early days, when there was only a relatively modest number of clubs, it was still predominantly men who were relatively well off, who had leisure time and, of course, could afford to play the game. It was a bit more expensive to play golf in England because most land in England was privately owned. So inevitably, there were costs to lease land, there was costs to set up golf courses. So it was a somewhat more expensive game to play in England initially. But that was really only at the start. As the number of golf clubs began to expand dramatically, then more and more people further down the social classes began to play golf. And this is where the story becomes quite an interesting one, because the number of golfers increased absolutely dramatically. So we're talking, as I mentioned, only about 100 golfers in 1860. There was about 10,000 golfers by 1890. But by the time we reached 1914, there was around 300,000 golfers in England. And you were then looking at something of the order of 10% of the middle class population was playing golf. So it was a widely participated sport. And it wasn't just the middle classes. It was also getting down into the sort of what you might call the skilled working classes were beginning to play golf at this time also. So golf was spreading geographically throughout the country. It wasn't just at the coast. It was predominantly an inland game. Something like 86% of the clubs formed in England during that period were inland. About 85% of them were on parkland rather than on links land, which only accounted for 4% of the golf clubs formed in that period. And they were also quite small clubs. 78% of them started out with 9 holes. And many of these clubs were formed in some of the smallest communities in England. It may surprise you, Ian, to know that over 50% of the clubs in England were formed in towns with populations of less than 10,000.
And again, I think that's something that will surprise a lot of people, Michael. My perception certainly would have been that golf in the early stages would have been an upper class game. It would have been for the elite. It would have been predominantly male. But I think your book shows that as you move towards the First World War, the period where your book study ends, that not only was it a game played by all social classes, but it was also a game played by both sexes, which is, again, something that might surprise people, that there was an awful lot of women who played the game of golf by 1914. Can you just explain a little bit about what your study has found on that side of things?
Well, initially, women were in very, very modest numbers. And of course, there was the dress code of the day was the long dresses and wearing bonnets. It wasn't exactly the best setup fashion-wise to be able to play a relatively athletic game like golf. But nevertheless, they took to it in quite substantial numbers. I mean, the key to this was 1893, when the Ladies Golf Union was formed. And that also established the first ladies championship at that time. And gradually what you observe is that golf clubs, although women were to some extent limited in the days of the week that they could play golf, typically during the week, men tended to have priority to play golf on Saturdays, the one afternoon of the week when they were free from work. But over time, the golf clubs not only expanded in number, but they became increasingly mixed social clubs. By 1914, when you look at the statistics, and there was a fairly extensive gathering of data involved in doing this, but you get to the conclusion that by 1914, 1 in every 4 of the golfers in England was a woman.
Logic sometimes tells you that after boom, there's a bit of a bust. Inevitably, things move in cycles like that. But I think what's interesting, Michael, is that out of the clubs that perhaps existed at the start of the 20th century, certainly by the First World War, something like 750 of those golf clubs are still in existence in the modern day, which I suppose when you think about it, it's quite remarkable, really, isn't it? That things tend to go in peaks and troughs, but golf has survived the test of time, and so many golf clubs are now celebrating centenaries, 125th anniversaries, which is directly linked into this period that your book covers. What do you think has been the success of golf? Why has it lasted so long?
Well, obviously a number of clubs didn't survive, and there are periods in our history since 1914 that can account for that. Both world wars resulted in the loss of a couple of hundred golf clubs because the land was basically given up for agriculture, or there wasn't sufficient interest in golf. Clearly, other priorities took place at those times. There were also periods of austerity, and as cities expanded, there was loss of land. But nevertheless, as you say, Ian, over 750 clubs today in England, and that's out of a total number of about 1,700, were formed prior to the First World War, which is an astonishing statistic, I think. If you look at almost any other industry, any other structure in industry, typically clubs, businesses don't survive that long. But they found a variety of strategies to do that, either by expanding their membership over time, typically because their catchment area increased. Also, they improved the quality of their golf courses over time and attracted more people to play golf. But I think at the nub of it, golf is just such a fascinating game. And once you become a golfer, rarely do you give it up. And that seems to be the case even back in those days.
There's certainly been a lot of effort and a lot of work, a lot of man hours going into this book, Michael. Can you just explain a little bit of the process behind gathering the data? Because this type of study has not been done before. I think, as you mentioned previously to me in a previous conversation, that individual club histories abound in the country. Most golf clubs will have a centenary book to commemorate their 100 years of existence, but the kind of work that you've undertaken here to try and collate everything into one book has never been attempted before. And hats off to you for doing it, because I can only imagine the amount of effort that's gone into this, because you have to dig deep, don't you? There's a lot of different ways of gathering the data to put this book together. Can you just explain a little bit of that process?
So the starting point was I have written 3 other books on the history of golf, on particular golf clubs. And it was in the context of writing those that I started to build up some sort of idea that there was a lot of clubs being formed at the same time as those clubs were formed. But I didn't know how many, and I didn't know where they were. And I wanted to try and understand better what was going on during that period when those individual clubs were formed. So this took me into this research to look at all of the clubs that were formed in that period. And the source of material for this were golf club handbooks and golf annuals from that period, which described in each year the major championships which took place. But more importantly, from my perspective, the directories included the details of all these golf clubs back in the 1890s through till the First World War. And so what I did was harvested the information that existed in those books, looking at each club and when it was formed, how many members it had, how much did it cost to join the club, how many holes did the golf course have, other aspects, what was the nearest railway station. All of these things were compiled into a large database. So that was the foundation of the study. It took me about a year to put all the information together before I started writing the book.
Well, Michael, I think it's fascinating that as we enjoy the current golf boom, that we can look back to the original golf boom in England, which you've catalogued so painstakingly in this new book, The Great English Golf Boom between 1864 and 1914. This is your chance to plug it, Michael. Where can we get our hands on this book? Because I'm sure there's a lot of golfers out there who will be fascinated to read about the origins of the sport that drives us all crazy from time to time.
Well, I've self-published the book, so really I am not just the author, but the publisher. And so to get a copy of the book, you have to contact me directly. And the simplest way to do that is using my email address, which is mike.morrison57@outlook.com.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure it's not only golfers, but also golf clubs would be interested to have this. It's a great coffee table book, if you like, to have in golf clubs, so people can dip in and out and research the history. Thank you for doing it on behalf of every golfer in the country. This is something I'm sure will fascinate a lot of people. And good luck when the book eventually comes out, Michael. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks to Michael, and good luck with the book. Remember, you can email Michael on mike.morrison57@outlook.com to get your hands on a copy. Good value at £25 and perfect for all lovers of the game. Thanks to you also for listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the insight provided by Michael, Steve Robinson, Martine and Heather Gilks, and James Crampton, the new King of Europe. As always, you can follow what's happening in and around England golf and the club and amateur scene by checking out the England Golf website. That's www.englandgolf.org. It's a hectic month for championships, and the best way to keep up to date is to follow us. You can do that by searching for and then following England Golf on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. Don't worry, younger listeners, we're on the case for TikTok. Stay tuned for that one. Thanks to Jenna Lee Portis for producing this month's podcast. So, until the next time, enjoy your golf. Bye for now.